Hello, hello, hello. The label of far right, levied against seemingly everyone with common sense, has become a laughable trope of the left. With so many people now no longer buying into the baseless accusation, the question that naturally arises is why do the left call everyone far right, and how effective actually is the label? Also, please do watch to the end where I conclude that the actual reason is very different from what it might at first seem. The historical reason as to why the left would call their enemies far right is, of course, fairly obvious. The new cultural myth of the post-World War II West is that of opposition to Nazism, which has been defined as far right. Though I personally think that this was an intentional mischaracterization by the Soviet Union in order to make them, the self-declared far left, look better. Indeed, I don't believe the fascists and nationalist socialists at the time would have called themselves far right. In any case, calling someone far right or hard right or explicitly fascist is a clear attempt to create an impression of guilt by association. Nazism is essentially defined as an ultimate evil as an article of faith, with no nuance about it whatsoever. So if anyone is seen to be sharing an opinion that the Nazis also believed, they are seen to be evil themselves, regardless of what the opinion is. The other effect of labelling people with thought-terminating cliches in this way is that it does just that. Terminates someone's ability to think critically. Not only from the label itself, but the general truth is that people tend to believe the first person they hear, something called anchoring. So if you've been told by a friend, lover, teacher, or favourite YouTuber even, or even a trusted institution like the BBC or Sky News, that, for example, Nigel Farage is a far-right racist, you are likely to believe that without any need for critical analysis or proper evidence, and then it takes much more evidence to the contrary to convince you otherwise. I must also say, as with most left-wing tactics, that there are those activists who know what they are doing, who maybe make up 5% of the movement, and the far larger remainder who do not know why these terms are being used in this way, yet sincerely believe them and push them. These people are called useful idiots. Idiots because they don't know the actual political theory, yet useful because they nonetheless further the radical left-wing agenda. So many of the people who call their enemies far right actually don't have any conception of the tactic or its purpose. Still, it's important to mention the purpose of the tactic nonetheless. However, many people do not fall for the tactic. This raises the question then of how effective it actually is. In reality, the effectiveness of calling your enemies far right is something that changes with time and according to how it's used. The use of these sorts of labels, when misused, as they always are, goes exactly like the fable of the boy who cried wolf. You start off with a highly trusting society, wherein people generally have each other's backs, so when something is declared to be a threat to the society, everyone comes out to condemn it or defend against it. The boy cries wolf, and all the villagers come with torches and pitchforks. If then there was a real wolf, the trust of the village is maintained. If, however, there was no wolf, or if the wolf was actually just a fox, for example, that trust is eroded. Eventually, the villagers will stop believing the cries of wolf, and the trust of the village has been destroyed. That is what's happening still with these accusations of racism, bigotry, homophobia, and being part of the far right. The left call everyone and anyone they disagree with far right, even if they are just expressing normal views. In the last decade, this has even ventured into the absurd, with anything from going to the gym, drinking milk, wanting a loving family, or even clapping your hands in applause be labelled as some sort of bigotry. Much like how printing mass amounts of currency causes massive inflation, the severe overuse of these terms has massively diluted their perceived potency to the point of being near meaningless. If anything, when the term far right is used to mean anything not far left, it becomes a badge of honour. If even moderates are considered far right, the only people not considered far right are the deranged communists, and you don't want to be one of them. With all this said, however, society on the whole is not unanimous in its rejection of these labels. There is still a huge proportion of people who do throw around these accusations and do believe the accusations that are thrown around. I'd argue the devaluation of the labels is a process we are still on, and it's hard to measure precisely how many people have wisened up to it and how many still fall for it. I mean, if something like Brexit or opinion polls on migration and other key issues are taken as proxy, I'd say maybe 60% of the adult population are over the bullshit, but who knows. Certainly these days, the tactic seems to be most effective at creating a friend-enemy distinction and enforcing unity within the left, though has little power against those not part of the left. Cancel culture, to a large extent, has lost its potency. As for those who still now fall for this crap, I'd argue that there are three main groups. The mainstream media NPCs, most of whom are boomers, the naive young leftists, and the shrinking remainder of people stuck in the new woke regime narrative who are yet to catch up with reality. I can talk about the NPCs and woke fools another time. Essentially, the NPCs are isolated from the issue, and the woke fools are too naively utopian to see the problems with their political theories. But as for those yet to catch up, I'd say, to an extent, that's fair enough. And they will come around. I mean, even personally, having been indoctrinated by the British education system, I used to sincerely believe that conservatism was evil, full of people who hated minorities and the poor. That was the end of it. It was only after leaving school that I started on the journey of waking up from the left-wing delusional framing. For people in a similar boat, of which there are many, these are the people we need to convince, be that through statistics, argumentation, living virtuously ourselves, or what have you. Until then, though, they may be heavily under the leftist spell, even if they consider themselves centrist, as I did. For these people, accusations of racism or being far right still carry weight, but as these accusations are extended to the trivial, like drinking milk or preferring white bread, more and more people will see through the lies. All said, the power of these words is failing. The boy has cried wolf far too often, and the villagers are sick of his nonsense. However, I don't think it makes sense to view it as a tactic to punish the right anymore. We are at the point where these accusations simply no longer have much of an impact on normal people, and in such a world, these labels serve far more as a method of internal denouncement. I mean, that's why the left denounce clearly normal things like working out, having a loving family, or eating meat as far right. They probably know they're not convincing the normies, they are simply broadcasting to their own people that they should not be doing these things, or associating with those who do. It is only through this framing of internal policing that their continued effort to call things racist makes sense. It's an act of puritanical denouncement for the pious woke fools. It's not really about us much at all. Anyway, I hope you found this video insightful. Am I on the money of it now being a method of upholding internal doctrine, or not? Let me know in the comments. Other than that, thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, and God save the King.